I mistook my sister for my ex-girlfriend. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling and feeling sorry for myself for the third night in a row. The girl problems of an 18-year-old who was still in high school weren't that critical by and large. I was quite aware of that, but somehow the thought didn't cheer me up much. I rolled over onto my side and tried again to think about something else. Anything, just to take my mind off of her for a little while. Andrea had been my girlfriend for almost 2 years, and things were going really well, I thought, especially as I watched the constant string of breakups going on around me. Then her family decided to move away. Some nonsense about her father's job. I guess I wasn't really paying attention at that point in the conversation. She was as upset as I was about the whole affair, but there wasn't much we could do. Neither of us were independent enough to leave our families and live on our own. "Hey, Alex," came a quiet voice from behind the door. Even as I turned away from her, I immediately recognized my older sister's voice. She must have finally made it home. The day Andrea had actually left had hit me hard that day, and naturally the only person I could talk to about it wasn't around. "Hey, Megan," I mumbled back. "Do you want to talk?" she asked. My mom would no doubt tell her what happened as soon as she walked through the door. At least it would save me the trouble. Although I wasn't sure I wanted to talk, I got to the point where I almost enjoyed feeling sorry for myself in some strange way. "You really miss her, don't you?" she said without question. I nodded and felt Megan sit down on the bed behind me and reach out to ruffle my hair like she did sometimes. "It's stupid, I know," I said. "Just a high school crush. We wouldn't have lasted anyway. Even people who get married don't last long." "But now you'll never know," Megan said with that note of understanding in her voice that I loved to hear. My parents loved me and tried their best to empathize with me, but they were from a different generation and just didn't understand me. Megan was different. She didn't always have advice for me, but she listened, and more importantly, she never judged. That was the main thing that set her apart from my parents and even my friends. I could tell her the most embarrassing and horrible things I had done or thought, and she wouldn't even flinch. "Yeah, that's part of it, I guess," I said. I returned to my previous position on my back and looked at my sister. She was sitting with her knees pulled up to her chest and looking at me with a completely neutral expression. "It's not a big deal, though," I continued. "People are starving and dying everywhere. And I'm whining about a girl. Get over it, right?" "Alex," she said slowly, "just because your problem isn't the worst in the world doesn't mean you can't take care of it, missing her." I felt tears coming and quickly blinked them away. Megan wouldn't care. But I hated crying, even when I was alone. It made me feel pathetic. Or maybe it was just because I only cried when I was already miserable. It was hard to tell. "I've been dreaming about her," I said quietly. "For the last 2 nights I've been waking up and seeing her in the room with me. It feels so real. She doesn't talk or say anything, even when I talk to her. Then I try to touch her and realize she was never there." I snorted. "I think it's more like a hallucination than a dream since I'm awake." Megan nodded thoughtfully, and I noticed that she was chewing on a few strands of hair with the corner of her mouth. It was usually a sign that she was focused on something and not paying attention to what she was doing. "It happens to me sometimes," she said. "When I'm stressed or anxious, sometimes I have hallucinations like that. One time I woke up and I was sure there was a huge hole in the floor. I had to go to the bathroom, but I was afraid I would fall if I got out of bed. I think I ended up actually jumping off the edge of the bed where I thought it was safe. It's funny what you remember sometimes, isn't it?" she finished, smiling at the strange memory. "Yeah," I agreed, squeezing out a weak smile. "Anyway, do you think you'll be okay?" she asked. "I think so. I'll probably just blow a little bit and then I'll be fine," I told her. "Okay, I'll be around if you need me," she said, getting up to leave. "Thanks, Megan," I said before she walked out of the doorway. "Anytime, bro," she echoed. Like the previous 2 nights, I woke up disoriented in my darkened room. Andrea was standing by my bed looking at me, and I smiled happily at her. "You're back?" I whispered. "Just checking on you," she whispered back. "You were making sounds like, I don't know, maybe a bad dream?" She ruffled my hair affectionately, like Megan always did, and for a moment I savored the feeling before I realized the difference. "You spoke," I rebuked her. "Yeah, so what?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "You never talked last time, Andrea. Why can you this time?" She paused for a long pause, long enough for it to reach me that she had touched me too. When I'd tried to touch her the previous 2 nights, she'd just vanished like a ghost. Trying my luck, I reached out and gently touched her hand. It seemed solid, and even better, it stayed where it was. "Maybe your imagination is just getting better," she said softly. "Maybe," I agreed. "Can you stay with me for a little while?" "Sure, Alex, just for a little while." She lay down next to me on the bed facing me as I moved over to give her enough room. "I'm glad you're here," I told her. "I miss you so much already." I leaned in to kiss her and felt her hesitate for a second before pulling away. I frowned, confused, and pulled back. "What's the matter?" I asked. "Nothing, just nothing," she said. I tried again, and this time she didn't pull away when I kissed her. She didn't seem to respond much, though. Then again, I reminded myself, she was just a figment of my imagination. I stroked her bare arm up and down and felt her slowly relax under my hand. When she seemed calm enough, I reached for Waitkyu. "Alex!" she protested, grabbing my wrist. "Shh," I whispered to her. Her feet were barefoot, which I thought was odd since I could have sworn she was wearing pants when she climbed into bed with me, but I didn't dwell on that for long. It was another inconsistent detail, reminding me that it wasn't really Andrea in my bed, but just a facsimile my mind had created. She tensed again as I stroked her thigh and slowly slid my hand under her shirt. Still, I wasn't prepared for her reaction when my fingers reached below her belly. "No!" she shouted sharply. I immediately recoiled as if I'd been burned. She may have seemed reluctant before, but this was an emphatic order to stop. "I'm sorry. I'm not sorry," I apologized. Her face softened when she saw how upset I was and rested my head against her shoulder. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not mad. Just go to sleep, Alex, just go to sleep," she repeated soothingly. She rocked me gently in her arms for a while, and I felt myself gradually calming down before falling back into sleep. "That was a weird night," I told Megan the next morning. "Why is that?" she asked. "Just dreams, hallucinations, anything." We had breakfast, and I took advantage of the time before our parents showed up to talk to my sister before I had to go to school. I was afraid the memory of last night would bother me all day, and I hoped Megan would say something that would help. "Andrea showed up again," I continued. "It was a different hallucination, more real, like she was actually almost there. She didn't want me to touch her. I don't know what that means." "Maybe nothing," Megan suggested. "Maybe your brain couldn't handle all that much." "I don't think so," I said, shaking my head. I remember her holding me afterward like it wasn't contact that was bad, but, you know, sexual stuff. I felt my cheeks warm slightly, though Megan didn't even blink. It wasn't the mention of love that confused me. We'd talked about it many times before, but when I said it out loud, I realized how silly it sounded that I was trying to sleep with a product of my own imagination. Still, I guess if I had been thinking clearly at the time, it wouldn't have been much of a hallucination. "Maybe it's just my subconscious trying to tell me something," I sighed. "Like I wasn't good enough for her." I smiled crookedly. "You know, probably not." "Don't say that, Alex. Never." I was stunned at how firmly my sister said those words, how the thought that I didn't deserve Andrea bothered her more than it bothered me. "Well, whatever. There must be a reason," I insisted. "Maybe," Megan said thoughtfully. Just try not to dwell on it too much, okay? Okay, I'll try, I agreed, even though I doubted my ability to follow through. That night I had trouble sleeping. I spent several hours tossing and turning in my bed, the thought that maybe I really didn't deserve Andrea while I had her surfaced from time to time, but I was actually more worried about her showing up again in the middle of the night. The memory of how she reacted when I tried to touch her really bothered me. I felt myself shaking and looked around in confusion. I didn't remember sleeping, but the clock on my dresser showed almost 3 in the morning, so I guessed I should have been asleep. Andrea was next to my bed again. This time her hand on my shoulder looked concerned. "You had another bad dream," she whispered. "I don't remember having dreams," I shrugged dismissively. "But anyway, can you tell me something while you're here? Did I do something wrong last night?" "No, nothing wrong. I'm sorry about last night. It was my fault," she said, smiling weakly at me. She climbed into bed with me, and this time I made sure she had enough room and didn't even try to touch her. "Alex, I love you. You know that, right?" she asked. "Yes, Andrea, I know that. I love you too." She flinched a little when I said her name. I found that odd. I expected her to flinch when I said I loved her. "This might be the last time I'm here," she told me. "I want you to realize how much I care about you. So, tonight we can do anything. Alex, anything you want to do. I'm not going to stop you. Are you sure?" "We don't have to if you don't want to," I replied. "I'm sure. Whatever you want, just tonight." I gently reached out and touched her cheek. It was just as real as last night, and this time she didn't pull away or tense up. When I kissed her lips, they parted, giving me as much access as I wanted. I let my hand fall to her breast and stroked lightly down her shirt. All the things that Andrea used to enjoy when we made love ran through my mind, and I was determined to make her happy, especially since she had said this might be the last time I saw her. I kissed her earlobe gently, barely touching it with my lips before I bit her as delicately as I could. She moaned softly as I ran my lips down her neck to the collar of her shirt. "Sit up a little," I whispered, finding the bottom of her shirt. With her help, I pulled the shirt over her head and tossed it to the floor. From what I remembered, her breasts were amazing, even in my darkened room. At any rate, I'd almost say they looked better. Do you like them, Alex?" she asked. I nodded affirmatively. She was still completely passive, letting me do all the work, but at least she seemed responsive to my efforts. "What are you going to do now?" she whispered nervously. Her words spurred me into action. She trembled beneath me, and I paused for a moment to look at her. "Are you scared, Andrea?" "There's nothing to worry about," I promised. "I know, I'm just waiting." We made love, and then I leaned back on the headboard, grinning. That was nice, Alex," she exhaled. My smile grew wider, and I crawled over to kiss her again. I lay there for a few minutes, listening to our breathing return to normal before turning to her. "Getting better?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I've actually gotten better." "Good." It had been a few weeks since that night, and I definitely felt like the worst was over. I still missed Andrea sometimes, but it wasn't as constant and painful anymore. I knew that the last time I saw her was a dream. It was pretty obvious afterward, even if it seemed so real at the time. But somehow, I think it still helped. I found myself spending a lot more time with Megan, at least partly because she was once again the only girl in my life. She didn't seem to mind that I dragged her around everywhere like a lost puppy, which was another testament to how much patience she always had for me. We were sitting in her room talking about nothing in particular, me on the bed and Megan at her computer, when I noticed a box on her dresser. I'd seen it there before and hadn't paid attention to it, but when I took the time to read the writing on the side, I realized what it was and froze. "What?" Megan asked, turning away from the solitaire layout she was idly playing when I stopped half-heartedly. Following my gaze, she saw what I was looking at, and an expression of resignation slid across her face. There was an open box of pregnancy tests on her dresser. "I'm sorry. I said and felt myself blush. It's none of my business. No, it was stupid of me to leave it lying around idle. I just didn't think. Well, I didn't think. Let's stop there. Megan stood up and tossed the box into the trash can before sitting down again. I wondered if I should leave. The situation was pretty awkward, and I didn't know what to do except hope it would go away after a set amount of time. I'm not pregnant, she finally blurted out. Oh, okay. I just got nervous, Megan continued. There was this guy a month ago and... She shrugged helplessly and clearly tried to gauge my reaction. You're not going to tell Mom or Dad, are you? Come on, Megan, you know I wouldn't do that. I'm even glad you're not pregnant, I admitted. I don't think I'm ready to be an uncle. And I'm not ready to be a mom, she replied, looking a little more relaxed. Hopefully, I won't be so stupid in the future. It bothered me a little that Megan even thought I might tell on her, but I consoled myself with the thought that she was probably just nervous about the whole ordeal. She'd been pretty good at hiding it before. I hadn't even noticed anything different. It wasn't until that night as I lay in bed that a disturbing thought crossed my mind. I immediately pushed it away the first time, but it kept coming back and just gnawed at my mind. It had been almost a month since Andrea, or rather the imaginary Andrea, had last appeared, which meant about the same time Megan said she might have gotten pregnant. Just a coincidence. I assured myself it could have all been. And yet when I remembered how real Andrea had seemed at the time, how real the love had been, I couldn't help but think there might be more to it than that. Eventually, I grew tired of thinking about it. What my mind was suggesting was something I should never have thought about. Just the thought that I had somehow mistaken my sister for my ex-girlfriend and... No, it was easy. All I had to do was go ask Megan who the guy was and put an end to the matter. I didn't like meddling in her life, but I was willing to do it anyway, given the circumstances. Megan, I called out quietly as I approached her room. What is it? I must have caught her before she fell asleep, because she answered almost immediately. She sat up in her bed and suppressed a yawn as I stepped closer to her. There's something I need to know, and it might seem a little strange, I explained. Who was that guy you were talking about? The one from a month ago? She didn't answer right away, so I asked again. Megan, who was he? There was a note of desperation in my voice that I couldn't quite control. Megan continued to look at me, and I realized I hadn't imagined it. Alex, I don't remember, she finally said. Yeah, you do, I replied bluntly. I felt nauseous at the thought of what I had done, all the times my sister had been there for me, all the things she'd done for me, and I'm sorry, Megan. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I wandered away from her into the hallway, trying to get back to my room. I had made love to my sister, it was clear to me now. In hindsight, it seemed so clear. So many things that should have given it away, but I didn't want to see it. I collapsed on the floor next to the bed, unable to do anything but curl up in a ball. She didn't deserve what I'd done to her. I could never apologize enough. Alex, Megan called softly. She followed me into my room. I couldn't understand why she did that, knowing how sick I was, except that my sister would never hate me, even after what I'd done. The thought upset me even more, and I tried to curl up even more into a ball and somehow dissolve into myself. No, I didn't deserve to ever see her again. I had to leave. It was all I could do for her right now. Alex, please look at me. The sound of her voice breaking halfway through the plea almost made me turn away out of pure reflex. My sister was upset, and I instinctively wanted to help, but of course I couldn't. Not this time. I'm so sorry, Megan, I whispered. So I'm sorry. She knelt down beside me, and suddenly her hand was on my head, gently stroking my hair. It wasn't your fault, little brother, it was me. You didn't even know what you were doing. I should have, although I should have realized. My eyelids began to ache where I'd clenched them so tightly, and my hands began to shake. Are you really that disgusted, Alex? Does the thought of us being together bother you that much? The pain in her voice broke my resolve, and I finally opened my eyes. The tears running down her cheeks were the first thing I noticed, and I swiped my hand to wipe them away before I realized what I was doing and recoiled. I didn't mean to hurt you, I muttered. You didn't. You never did. I let you do what you wanted to do, remember? I knew what was going on, and it was my decision. But why? Megan shifted slightly, leaning back against the bed and getting comfortable. Because you were hurting your little brother, and I knew I could fix the situation. It can be my secret, and you never have to know about it. She smiled a little sadly at me. That would work too, if I really wanted it to be a secret. I don't understand, I said in genuine confusion. She averted her gaze for a moment, long enough for me to be ready to verbally prod her again. I was selfish, Alex, she said softly. I got careless, and I know it's because deep down I wanted you to know that we did. I hoped that one day you would feel for me the way I feel for you. She stood up as I stared at her in shock, unable to fully process what she'd said to me. I know it was a stupid thing to do. Stupid and selfish, she said. But now it's done, and I just hope you don't hate me for it. She gave me another of those sad smiles and walked out the door. She stopped in the hallway and looked like she was going to say something else, but stopped and walked away. Naturally, the next few days were a little awkward between Megan and me. She did her best to make things easy for me. She didn't try to force me to talk and generally gave me personal space. I could tell she was in pain. It was obvious every time we passed each other in the hallway or when we had to pretend like nothing had changed when we sat at the dinner table. Anyway, it's obvious to me that our parents didn't seem to notice anything different, but that could have just been because I was looking for it and they weren't. I missed her too, as strange as that sounds. We still lived in the same house and saw each other every day, but I still missed her. Sometimes I wanted to talk to her, and I would start walking to her room before I remembered that it wasn't that easy anymore. For the first time in a long time, there were problems between us that needed to be resolved before we could just sit down and talk like we used to. But, of course, I wasn't even sure we could go back to the way things were. Megan had almost said I was more than a brother to her, but I didn't know if I could feel the same way about her. Sure, I loved her, but she was still my sister, and there were lines we just weren't supposed to cross. Except, of course, that we'd already crossed almost the biggest line there was. If only she wasn't my sister, or if society had evolved in some other way, then we could do whatever we wanted. That was the real question I had to answer. All things being equal, what would I want my relationship with Megan to be? When I thought about it that way, it seemed simpler. I wanted her to be happy, and if that meant we'd be closer than before, closer than we should be, then that was fine. The first time I'd decided I was okay with the idea of making love to my sister, I'd angrily put the thought out of my mind and tried my best not to think about it again. Gradually, I realized that it wasn't just a sick fantasy. I had actually come to terms with it. If I'd had more time to think about it before confronting Megan, I might not have been upset at all. The problem was that I still had to deal with the real world, which meant that my relationship with my sister could never be the same. Too many people could get hurt. "Hey, Alex, are you in here?" Megan's voice came from my door, snapping me out of my reverie. "Uh-huh," I replied. "The pizza just arrived. I'll just leave it in the kitchen when you're ready," she told me. "Okay, thanks." Our parents were out for the evening, so Megan ordered pizza for us. I sighed when I realized she was thinking of me again and not making me stay in the same room with her long enough to eat. She was so nice to me, always had been, and I was a terrible brother. So what if people could get hurt? Megan was already hurting, and so was I, for that matter. Making a decision, I went downstairs and put a couple slices of pizza on my plate before heading into the living room. Megan looked at me in surprise as I sat down on the far end of the couch. "Hi," I said simply. "Hi," she said back, smiling slightly but genuinely at me. For the first time in what seemed like a very long time, We didn't say anything else for a while, but I think Megan had had enough of my presence. I cast glances at her from time to time, and she definitely seemed happier than she had in the past few days. Eventually, I got up to take my plate back to the kitchen, and when I got back to the living room, I took the opportunity to sit right next to Megan. She immediately leaned against me, and I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her to me. "I'm sorry about the last few days, Megan," I whispered. She shook her head. "No, I understand. That doesn't mean it's okay. You're always there for me when I need you, but I reacted badly, and I'm sorry." Megan snuggled closer to me until I felt her hair tickle my neck. I took that as a sign that she was accepting my apology, even if she didn't think I needed it. "But, it doesn't have to be the other way around," she said. "I mean, there's nothing I can do about what's already happened, but we'll never have to do it again unless you want to. I'm just glad you don't hate me for it." Honestly, Megan, I don't know what to think about it. All I've really decided is that I want you to be happy. You deserve it. She looked at me enigmatically for a second, and then slowly brought her face close to mine. She kissed me gently, then pulled away to gauge my reaction. Before she could say anything, I leaned forward and kissed her harder, pulling her onto my lap. "That didn't take long," Megan said when we paused again. "I can't help it, you're too good." The feeling of holding my sister so close, her face just a few inches from mine, cut through all the problems I hadn't yet solved. I wanted to be with her, and if it meant an unconventional relationship, at least we could deal with the consequences together. I let Megan push me onto my back across the seat of the couch as she maneuvered me. Her hands slid down my chest and then slid down under my shirt. I pulled her head closer for another kiss and let her hair fall around us, trapping us in our own little world. It wasn't until I felt her trying to pull my shirt over my head that I finally grabbed her wrists to stop her. "You shouldn't do that here," I said. Our parents weren't due back for a while, but there was no point in taking a stupid risk. I saw Megan frown as she had the same thought I had, then she shrugged and stood up. "Okay, let's go." She helped me up off the couch and then practically dragged me up the stairs to her room, where she playfully pushed me onto her bed. Before I could say anything, she pulled off her top and threw it on the floor. "We're going to make love again." "Megan, I don't have my protection with me." She smiled widely at me. "I've been on the pill now, since the other night. Well, in a few days anyway." Her smile turned seductive, almost predatory as she continued. "That means you can have me anytime you want, little brother. Don't worry about it. Are you ready, Alex? Ready to meet your big sister?" I didn't trust myself to speak, and instead just nodded affirmatively. "Wow," I said, unable to think of anything more eloquent after we slept together. "Yeah," she agreed. "So now what?" I asked after a moment. "Well, we still have about an hour and a half before Mom and Dad get back," Megan said thoughtfully. "So until then, I guess we can do whatever we want." "Whatever we want?" I liked the sound of that. "The end!"